The judge leaned forward as my 7-year-old daughter Emma stood up in the packed courtroom. "Your Honor," she said in her small voice, "can I show you something Daddy doesn't know?" My parents' lawyer smirked. My sister Jessica rolled her eyes. The judge nodded kindly. Emma pulled out her tablet with trembling hands and pressed play. The first voice that filled the silent courtroom was Jessica's, crystal clear. "We just need to get him out first. Then we can sell the house and split the money. The old fools will never know." 6 months before that devastating moment in court, life felt normal. I was 32 years old, living peacefully in the home where I grew up with my daughter Emma. The divorce from Amanda had been finalized 2 years earlier, and I'd moved back into my childhood bedroom to help care for my aging parents while raising Emma as a single father. My name is Lucian, and I work as an electrical contractor. The job pays well enough to support my family, maintain the old Victorian house, and ensure my parents Robert and Patricia have everything they need. At 73 and 71 respectively, they'd started struggling with daily tasks. Doctor appointments, grocery shopping, home repairs. I handled it all without complaint. Emma had settled into life at the house beautifully. She loved having her own room upstairs, decorated with purple walls and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. The neighborhood kids became her friends, and she walked 3 blocks to Lincoln Elementary every morning. My parents adored having their granddaughter around, reading bedtime stories, and teaching her to bake cookies. I paid the utility bills, property taxes, and had invested over $40,000 in renovations during the 5 years we'd lived there. New electrical wiring throughout the house, a updated kitchen, fresh paint inside and out, and a complete bathroom remodel. My parents always said the house would be mine someday, that all my hard work and care would be worth it. Jessica, my 32-year-old sister, lived across town in a small apartment. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office and visited our parents maybe once a month, usually when she needed money. Her visits followed a predictable pattern. She'd complain about her job, her bills, her dating life, then ask Mom and Dad for a loan that everyone knew would never be repaid. That Sunday in March started like any other family dinner. I'd cooked pot roast with vegetables, Emma had set the table, and we gathered in the dining room that overlooked the back garden. Mom complimented the meal, Dad asked Emma about school, and everything felt warm and comfortable. Then Jessica cleared her throat. "Mom and Dad have something important to tell you," she announced, wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. My parents exchanged nervous glances. Dad fidgeted with his napkin while Mom stared at her plate. "What's going on?" I asked, setting down my fork. "Well, son," Dad began slowly, "your mother and I have been talking with Jessica about our plans for the house." "Plans?" Emma looked up from her mashed potatoes. Mom finally spoke. "We've decided to give the house to Jessica. She deserves a chance at home ownership, and it's time you stood on your own." The words hit me like a physical blow. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "Give the house to Jessica?" "She's never owned property before," Dad explained, his voice gaining confidence as if he'd rehearsed this speech. "You've had your chance to save money living here. Now it's her turn." Jessica nodded enthusiastically. "I've been dreaming of owning my own home for years. This place has so much potential." I looked around the dining room, at the crown molding I'd restored, the hardwood floors I'd refinished, the electrical fixtures I'd installed. But I've lived here for 5 years. I've paid for improvements, utilities, property taxes. We never discussed rent, because you said this was my home too. "Those were contributions to family expenses," Jessica interrupted. "Not investments in property you don't own." Emma's eyes darted between the adults, confusion clouding her young face. "Are we moving, Daddy?" "I hope not, sweetheart." I turned back to my parents. "Mom, Dad, surely we can work something out. I can start paying rent if that's what you want, but this is Emma's home. Her friends are here, her school." "Our minds are made up," Mom said firmly, though she couldn't meet my eyes. "Jessica has already consulted with lawyers about the transfer." The room went silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Emma pushed food around her plate, no longer hungry. "Lawyers?" I managed to ask. Jessica's smile widened. "We wanted to make sure everything was legal and proper. You have 30 days to find new housing arrangements." "And if I don't?" Dad's face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "Then we'll file eviction papers." "We don't want it to come to that, Lucian, but you're a grown man." It's time to take responsibility for your own life. Emma suddenly spoke up, her voice small and hurt. But Grandma, you said this was my room forever. You helped me put up the stars. Mom's composure cracked slightly. You'll visit, dear. You'll always be welcome to visit. That's not the same thing, Emma whispered, tears forming in her eyes. I reached over and squeezed her hand. Don't worry, baby. Daddy will figure this out. Jessica stood up, gathering her purse. I know this seems sudden, but it's really for the best. I'll be able to take proper care of Mom and Dad as they get older. They need someone young and energetic around. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been the one driving them to medical appointments, handling their prescriptions, fixing everything that broke. Jessica showed up for Sunday dinner, and suddenly she was the caretaker? After Jessica left, the house felt different, colder. Emma went to her room early, saying she didn't feel good. I helped my parents clean the dishes in uncomfortable silence. Why? I finally asked as we stood in the kitchen. Why now? Why like this? Mom wiped her hands on a dish towel, avoiding my gaze. Jessica made some good points about our future, about what's fair. Fair? I've been here every day for 5 years. I've sacrificed dating, social life, everything, to make sure you're both cared for. How is giving away my home to someone who visits once a month fair? It's not your home, Dad said quietly. It's ours to do with as we please. The finality in his voice told me the conversation was over. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to Emma cry softly in the room next door. The house I'd poured my heart and money into, the place where I'd planned to raise my daughter, would soon belong to someone else. I had 30 days to find a new place to live, uproot Emma from everything she knew, and somehow maintain caring for parents who'd just betrayed me in the deepest possible way. But as I'd soon learn, losing the house was only the beginning of Jessica's plan. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove straight to the offices of Martinez and Associates, a law firm I'd found online. David Martinez, a soft-spoken man in his 50s, listened patiently as I explained the situation. Do you have any documentation showing ownership interest in the property? He asked, reviewing notes on his legal pad. I shook my head. My parents always said they'd add my name to the deed eventually, but we never made it official. I have receipts for all the improvements I've made, utility bills I've paid, property tax receipts. Martinez nodded sympathetically. Unfortunately, without legal ownership or a written rental agreement, your position is quite vulnerable. If your parents want to transfer the property to your sister, they have every right to do so, even after everything I've contributed. Contributions to a property you don't legally own are considered gifts unless there's a written agreement stating otherwise. The law is clear on this point. The reality hit me like a sledgehammer. 5 years of my life, $40,000 in improvements, countless hours of care and maintenance, all legally meaningless. What are my options? You could argue for compensation based on unjust enrichment, but that would require expensive litigation with uncertain outcomes. Your best bet is negotiating with your family for more time or some form of financial consideration. I thanked Martinez and drove home with a sick feeling in my stomach. Emma was at school, and the house felt eerily quiet. I walked through each room, remembering the work I'd done. The kitchen where I'd installed custom cabinets. The living room where I'd repaired plaster walls and painted over water damage. The basement where I'd rewired the entire electrical system to bring it up to code. All of it would soon belong to Jessica. That afternoon, I picked Emma up from school as usual. She climbed into my truck with her backpack and art project. A drawing of our house with all of us standing in front, smiling. Mrs. Henderson said we could share our family drawings with the class tomorrow, Emma said. But I don't want to anymore. Why not, sweetheart? Because it won't be our house much longer. She stared out the window as we drove. Why does Aunt Jessica get to take our home? I struggled for an answer that wouldn't turn Emma against her grandparents or aunt. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that are hard to understand. But no matter what happens, you and I will be okay. Will I still go to my school? I'm going to try to find us a place nearby, so you can stay at Lincoln Elementary. But even as I said it, I knew it would be nearly impossible. The neighborhood around my parents' house was expensive, full of restored Victorian homes like theirs. On my contractor's salary, Especially with the added expense of securing a new place quickly, I'd probably have to move Emma across town. Over the next few days, I noticed changes in the house dynamic. Jessica started visiting daily, something she'd never done before. She'd arrive around lunchtime, staying for hours to help Mom and Dad with planning. I'd come home from work to find them huddled around the kitchen table with papers spread out, conversation stopping abruptly when I entered the room. Jessica would smile brightly and ask about my day, but her eyes held a coldness I'd never seen before. Emma began acting differently too. She'd grown quiet around her grandparents, no longer running to hug them when they called her name. She spent more time in her room, packing her belongings into boxes to help Daddy. One evening, I overheard Jessica talking to my parents in the living room. I'd come downstairs for a glass of water and caught fragments of conversation through the partially open door. "He's been taking advantage of your generosity for years," Jessica was saying. "Free housing, free utilities, and what does he contribute? Basic maintenance he should be doing anyway. But he's been good to us," Mom protested weakly. "Has he? When was the last time he took you anywhere fun? All he does is work and expect you to babysit Emma. You're enabling his failure to launch." My hands clenched around the water glass. Babysit Emma? My parents adored spending time with their granddaughter, and I'd never once asked them to watch her when they weren't willing. "Jessica has a point," Dad's voice joined in. "Maybe we've been too lenient. A man his age should have his own place. And think about your retirement," Jessica continued. "This house is worth $300,000. You could sell it and have real security for your golden years instead of carrying dead weight." Dead weight. That's how my own sister saw me. The next week brought the formal eviction notice, delivered by certified mail. The legal language was stark and impersonal, citing non-payment of rent as grounds for immediate removal. The document claimed I owed $12,000 in back rent, an amount that had never been discussed or agreed upon. I called Martinez immediately. "This is concerning," he said, after I read him the notice. "Were you ever asked to pay rent?" "Never. Not once in 5 years." "Then this appears to be a fabrication. However, fighting it will require court proceedings, and I have to warn you, family law disputes can get expensive quickly." "How expensive?" "Depending on how contested this becomes, you could be looking at $20,000 to $30,000 in legal fees. Money I didn't have, for a house I'd never legally owned." That evening, Jessica moved some personal items into my parents' house, claiming she needed to stay temporarily to help with their care. She set up in the downstairs guest room, the one I'd converted from a den 2 years earlier. Emma watched Jessica carry boxes through our front door, with wide, confused eyes. "Why is Aunt Jessica moving in while we're moving out?" she asked. I didn't have a good answer for that either. The situation became surreal. Jessica would cook breakfast for my parents while I got Emma ready for school. She'd greet me cheerfully when I returned from work, as if she hadn't just stolen my home and livelihood. She even offered to help me look for apartments, suggesting places across town that would double Emma's commute to school. "There's a nice complex near the highway," she said one evening, showing me listings on her laptop. "Very affordable for someone in your situation." My situation. As if I were some charity case instead of the person who'd maintained this house for years. 2 weeks before the court date, I received an unexpected phone call from Amanda, my ex-wife. We'd maintained a cordial relationship since the divorce, focused on Emma's well-being. "Lucian, I need to tell you something," Amanda said, her voice strained. "Jessica contacted me a few months ago. My blood ran cold." "About what?" "She was asking questions about Emma's custody arrangement. About whether you were providing a stable home environment." "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that you're an excellent father, and Emma is thriving in your care." But she kept pushing, suggesting that maybe Emma would be better off with more, quote, traditional stability. I sank into a kitchen chair. Jessica is trying to get Emma taken away from me? It sounded that way. She asked if I'd ever consider seeking full custody, said she could provide character references if needed. And? I told her absolutely not. Emma belongs with you. But Lucian, I'm worried. If Jessica is manipulative enough to try breaking up Emma's home life, what else might she do? What else indeed? I was beginning to realize that the house was only part of Jessica's plan. That night, I tucked Emma into bed in her star-covered room, knowing our time there was running out. "Daddy, I have a question," she said, as I pulled her blankets up. "What is it, baby?" Why does Aunt Jessica keep lying about you? My heart stopped. What do you mean? I heard her telling Grandma and Grandpa that you never help them, but you drive them everywhere. And she said you don't pay for anything, but I saw you give Grandpa money for groceries last week. Emma's innocent observations cut straight to the truth. Jessica had been systematically poisoning my parents against me, rewriting history to justify her actions. Sometimes people say things that aren't true when they want something badly, I explained carefully. Is that why she keeps asking me weird questions about how you take care of me? My blood chilled. What kind of questions? Like if you ever get really angry, or if you drink beer during the day, or if I ever feel scared at home. Jessica wasn't just after the house. She was building a case to prove I was an unfit parent. The court date was 13 days away, and my daughter had unknowingly revealed that my sister was planning to destroy every aspect of my life. The revelation about Jessica's questions to Emma kept me awake all night. I stared at the ceiling, trying to process the scope of what my sister was attempting. Taking the house was devastating enough, but targeting my relationship with Emma crossed every possible line. The next morning, I decided to document everything. I started keeping detailed records of Jessica's visits, her conversations with my parents, and any unusual incidents. If she was building a case against me, I needed to build one right back. My first discovery came by accident. I'd taken a sick day to meet with Martinez again and arrived home early to find Jessica at the kitchen table with several opened envelopes. When she saw me, she quickly gathered the papers and smiled. "Just helping Mom sort through the mail," she said. "So much paperwork to keep track of at their age." But I recognized one of those envelopes. It was addressed to me, containing a response from the contractor's license board regarding a continuing education requirement. I'd been waiting for that letter for 2 weeks. "Jessica, that's my mail you're sorting." Her smile never wavered. "Oh, this old thing? It was mixed in with Mom's correspondence. Easy mistake. It's a federal crime to open someone else's mail." "Don't be so dramatic, Lucian. I was just trying to help organize things." That afternoon, I spoke with a postal worker who delivered our mail. Tom Bradley had been working our route for 8 years and knew our family well. "Has anyone besides me been collecting mail from our box?" I asked. Tom nodded. "Your sister's been grabbing it most days when she's here. Said she was helping your folks with their affairs. Seemed reasonable. Even mail addressed specifically to me? Well, she said she was handling all the household correspondence now. Is there a problem?" There was definitely a problem. Jessica had been intercepting my mail for weeks, possibly months. Important documents, legal notices, bills, all filtered through my sister before reaching me. I immediately contacted the post office to file a formal complaint and requested that all mail addressed to me be held for pickup rather than delivered to the house. That evening, Jessica confronted me about the mail hold. "Really, Lucian? You're making this petty little drama about mail delivery now? It's not petty to expect my personal correspondence to remain private." She laughed, but there was an edge to it. "Fine, be paranoid. It just makes you look more unstable." Unstable. There was that word again. 3 days later, I made my second disturbing discovery. Emma had been staying with Amanda on weekends recently, something they'd arranged to give Emma stability during the housing transition. When Emma returned Sunday evening, she seemed upset. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked as we sat in her room. "Mommy asked me more weird questions this weekend." "What kind of questions?" "The same ones Aunt Jessica asks. About whether you drink too much, or if you ever yell at me, or if our house is clean enough." I felt sick. "What did you tell Mommy?" "The truth. That you don't drink except sometimes a beer with dinner. That you only raise your voice when I'm not listening to safety rules. And that our house is always clean because you're neat about everything." Smart girl. But the pattern was becoming clear. Jessica had convinced Amanda to participate in gathering evidence against me. "Emma? Did Mommy say why she was asking those questions?" Emma fidgeted with her stuffed rabbit. "She said Aunt Jessica was worried about me, and that maybe I should come live with her for a while. But Daddy, I don't want to live with Mommy full time. I want to stay with you." "You're not going anywhere, baby. I promise." But privately, I was terrified. If Amanda and Jessica were working together, they could present a united front to any court reviewing custody arrangements. A concerned mother and aunt worried about an unstable father losing his housing. I called Martinez the next morning. This is definitely concerning, he agreed after I explained the situation. Have you noticed any other unusual behavior from family members? My parents have been acting strange. They won't talk to me directly anymore about anything important. Jessica handles all communication. That's textbook isolation behavior. She's positioning herself as their protector while painting you as a threat. What can I do? Document everything. Keep records of your interactions with Emma. Save receipts showing you're a responsible provider. Stay calm and don't give them ammunition. But staying calm became increasingly difficult as Jessica tightened her control over the household. She'd taken over grocery shopping, claiming my parents were too confused to manage it themselves. She scheduled all their appointments and drove them everywhere, despite the fact that I'd been doing those things for years without issue. Most insidiously, she'd begun limiting my access to my own parents. If I tried to discuss the housing situation, Jessica would interrupt, saying it was too stressful for elderly people to handle. If I offered to drive them somewhere, she'd already made arrangements. If I wanted to have a private conversation with Mom or Dad, Jessica would hover nearby, monitoring every word. My parents, meanwhile, seemed increasingly uncomfortable around me. They'd avoid eye contact, give short answers to my questions, and defer to Jessica on every decision. It was like watching them slowly slip away, replaced by strangers who happened to look like my mother and father. The psychological manipulation was masterful and horrifying. A week before our court date, I discovered Jessica had quit her job at the dental office. I need to focus on caring for Mom and Dad full-time now, she announced at dinner. They require so much attention at their age. They've been managing fine, I pointed out. Have they? Dad forgot to take his blood pressure medication twice this week. Mom couldn't remember where she put her glasses. They need professional oversight. Professional oversight. My parents were sharp, active people who'd been living independently just fine. Dad occasionally forgot a pill, like anyone might. Mom misplaced her glasses sometimes, like everyone does. These normal, minor incidents were being reframed as evidence of serious cognitive decline. What about your bills? I asked Jessica. How will you support yourself? Mom and Dad are covering my expenses, since I'm providing essential care services. Essential care services that I'd been providing for free for 5 years. After dinner, I tried to speak privately with my father. Dad, can I ask you something? Do you really think you need full-time care? He glanced nervously toward the living room, where Jessica was watching television. Your sister knows about elder care issues. She's been researching our needs. But how do you feel? Do you feel like you're declining? Dad hesitated. She says we are. She's shown us articles about signs we should watch for. My heart broke a little. Jessica had convinced my parents they were sicker and more vulnerable than they actually were, making them dependent on her for validation and care. Dad, you're 73 years old, and you still work in your garden every day. You drive yourself to the hardware store. You balance your checkbook perfectly. You're not declining. Maybe you're not seeing what Jessica sees, he said quietly. Maybe we're hiding it better from you. She'd gotten to him completely. That night, as I lay in bed listening to the house settle around me, I realized the full scope of Jessica's plan. She wasn't just taking my home and targeting my daughter. She was systematically isolating my parents, making them believe they needed her while painting me as either neglectful or opportunistic. In one brilliant manipulation, she'd positioned herself as the devoted daughter and protective aunt while casting me as the unstable son taking advantage of elderly parents and providing an unsuitable environment for a child. The most terrifying part was how well it was working. Emma padded into my room around midnight, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Daddy, I can't sleep. I keep having bad dreams about moving away. I pulled her into bed with me, holding her close. What happens in the dreams? We have to live somewhere far away, and I can't see you anymore, and Aunt Jessica is laughing. Even in her 7-year-old subconscious, Emma understood the threat we were facing. That's not going to happen, sweetheart. No matter what, you and I stay together. But as I held my daughter in the dark, I wondered if that was a promise I could keep. Jessica had the house, the parents, an ally in my ex-wife, and apparently months of planning behind her assault on my life. In 6 days, we'd face a judge who would see Jessica's carefully crafted narrative. A concerned family trying to help an unstable man who'd been taking advantage of elderly parents and providing an unsuitable home for an innocent child. I had the truth, but truth doesn't always win in court. What I didn't know was that Emma had been conducting her own investigation, using skills she'd learned from detective shows on television. While I'd been scrambling to defend against Jessica's attacks, my 7-year-old daughter had been quietly gathering evidence of her own. Evidence that Jessica had no idea existed. 3 weeks before our court date, the trap Jessica had been setting finally sprung. I came home from a long day, installing electrical systems in a new subdivision, to find a woman I didn't recognize sitting at our kitchen table with my parents and Jessica. "Lucian, this is Sarah Williams from Child Protective Services," Jessica announced with false concern. "She's here to conduct a routine welfare check on Emma." My stomach dropped. A welfare check? Sarah Williams was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, but a serious demeanor. She stood and extended her hand. "Mr. Cooper, I'm sorry for the unscheduled visit, but we received a report about Emma's living situation. I need to ask you some questions." "What kind of report?" Jessica spoke up before Sarah could answer. "We've all been concerned about the stress Emma's been under with the housing uncertainty. Children need stability." I looked at my parents, hoping for support, but they stared at their hands. Mom seemed near tears. "Mr. Cooper," Sarah continued, "would it be possible to speak with Emma privately? She's at school right now. I pick her up at 3:15. "That's fine. I can wait. Or we can arrange another time." "No, let's do this now. I have nothing to hide." For the next hour, Sarah interviewed me about my parenting, work schedule, living arrangements, and plans for the future. Her questions were professional but pointed, clearly designed to assess whether Emma was in a safe, stable environment. "How has the upcoming move affected Emma emotionally?" she asked. "She's understandably upset about leaving her friends and school, but she's resilient. We've talked about finding a place nearby so she can maintain her social connections." "Have you secured housing yet?" "I'm looking at several options." This was technically true, though I hadn't found anything affordable in the right area. Jessica interjected, "He hasn't found anywhere suitable yet. Emma might have to change schools in the middle of the academic year." Sarah made notes, without comment. When Emma arrived home from school, she handled the interview beautifully. She told Sarah about our daily routines, her favorite things about living with me, and how I helped with homework every night. She mentioned our weekend activities, the books we read together, and how safe she felt in our home. "Do you ever feel scared or worried about anything?" Sarah asked. "Just about having to move," Emma answered honestly. "But Daddy says we'll be okay, no matter what." "Does your daddy ever get angry or yell?" "Only if I'm not being safe, like if I try to cross the street without looking. But he never yells mean things, just safety things." Perfect answer. My daughter was naturally providing evidence of good parenting. After Emma went upstairs to start her homework, Sarah wrapped up the interview. "Mr. Cooper, I don't see any immediate concerns regarding Emma's welfare. However, I am required to follow up in 2 weeks to ensure the housing situation has been resolved satisfactorily." 2 weeks. That would be 1 week after our court date. What happens if I haven't found permanent housing by then? Sarah's expression softened slightly. "Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. My goal is Emma's well-being, not separating families unnecessarily." After Sarah left, Jessica could barely contain her satisfaction. "I hope this was a wake-up call, Lucian. Emma's welfare should be your top priority." "It always has been." "Has it?" "Because providing stable housing is pretty basic parenting." The gaslighting was relentless. Jessica had orchestrated the CPS visit, then acted like a concerned aunt worried about her niece's well-being. That evening, I overheard my parents talking in their bedroom. I'd gone upstairs to check on Emma, and caught fragments of conversation through their partially open door. "Maybe we're making a mistake," Mom was saying. "Lucian has been good to us, and Emma is such a sweet child." "Jessica says we can't think emotionally," Dad replied. "She says Lucian has been taking advantage of our generosity, and we've been too blind to see it. But $40,000 in improvements. Money he spent to benefit himself too." Jessica explained that. Jessica explained. Everything filtered through Jessica's interpretation. "What about Emma's schooling?" Mom continued. "She's thriving at Lincoln Elementary. There are good schools everywhere. Children adapt. I just have this feeling we're going to regret this." "It's too late now," The papers are filed. Jessica says backing down would confuse everyone and make us look incompetent. I crept away, heartsick. My parents had doubts, but Jessica had convinced them they were trapped in their decision. 2 days later, I made a discovery that changed everything. I was helping Emma clean her room when I noticed her tablet was missing from her desk. "Emma, where's your tablet?" "I'm keeping it somewhere safe," she said mysteriously. "Safe from what?" "From Aunt Jessica. She keeps trying to look at it when I'm not around." This struck me as odd. Why would Aunt Jessica want to look at your tablet? I don't know. But she asks lots of questions about what apps I have, and if I ever record videos. Record videos. A chill ran down my spine. "Do you record videos, sweetheart?" Emma bit her lip, looking uncertain. "Sometimes. For school projects. And sometimes I practice being a detective like on TV." "What do you mean, practice being a detective?" "I listen to conversations and write down clues. And sometimes I record important things so I don't forget." My heart started racing. What kind of important things? Things that might be evidence. Like when people say different things to different people, or when someone is lying. I knelt down to her level. "Emma, have you been recording conversations in the house?" She nodded seriously. Detectives gather evidence to solve cases. I've been gathering evidence to solve our case. Our case? Why everyone is being mean to you when you're the nicest daddy ever. I pulled her into a hug, amazed by her 7-year-old logic. "Can I see what you've recorded?" Emma retrieved her tablet from its hiding place under her mattress. With the seriousness of a professional investigator, she showed me folder after folder of audio recordings, each one carefully labeled with dates and descriptions. Meeting about house, Aunt Jessica and Grandma and Grandpa. Aunt Jessica. On phone with someone. Aunt Jessica coaching Grandma. Mommy and Aunt Jessica. Talking about me. There were dozens of recordings spanning several months. Emma had been conducting surveillance like a tiny FBI agent, documenting Jessica's manipulation campaign without anyone realizing it. "Emma, have you listened to all of these?" "Some of them." The detective shows say, you have to review evidence carefully. "What did you hear?" Her face scrunched up in concentration. "Aunt Jessica tells different stories to different people. She told Grandma that you never help with anything. But she told the CPS lady that you work too much to take proper care of me. She told Mommy that you drink too much. But she told Dr. Peterson that you're too controlling. Dr. Peterson was my father's physician." Jessica had been spreading different versions of lies to different people, confident that they'd never compare notes. "Can I listen to some of these?" Emma nodded and selected a recording labeled Aunt Jessica's Real Plan. Jessica's voice came through clearly. "The old man will probably die in the next few years anyway. The house will be worth $400,000 by then. We sell it, split the money, and I disappear to somewhere warm. But first we have to get Lucian out and establish that I'm their primary caregiver." Another voice responded, "A man I didn't recognize. And the kid? Amanda's willing to take full custody once we establish that Lucian's an unfit father. Housing instability, financial problems, family dysfunction. The court will see a clear pattern. What about child support? Amanda doesn't want his money. She wants him out of the picture entirely. Too much drama, too much conflict. A clean break is better for everyone." My blood ran cold. Amanda didn't just want full custody. She wanted to eliminate me from Emma's life entirely. Emma had recorded Jessica's confession to conspiracy, elder abuse, fraud, and systematic character assassination. "When did you record this, baby?" "Last week, when Aunt Jessica was talking on the phone in the garden. I was in my room with the window open." "Have you told anyone about these recordings?" "No. I wanted to wait until I had enough evidence. Detective shows say you need really good evidence before you present your case. My 7-year-old daughter had just handed me the smoking gun that could save our family. But the recordings revealed something even more sinister than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about greed or sibling rivalry. Jessica and Amanda had formed an alliance to completely destroy my life, take everything I owned, and remove me from my daughter's life permanently. I spent that night listening to every recording Emma had made. The scope of the conspiracy was breathtaking. Jessica had been planning this for over a year, slowly poisoning my parents against me while building a case for my unfitness as a father. She'd convinced my parents they were declining mentally and needed her care. She'd manipulated Amanda into believing I was an obstacle to Emma's well-being. She'd gathered allies by telling each person a different version of events, always casting herself as the concerned family member trying to protect vulnerable people from my various failures. The recordings contained evidence of Jessica stealing money from my parents' accounts, forging documents about non-existent rent agreements, and coaching my parents on what to tell CPS. But perhaps most damaging was a conversation between Jessica and Amanda discussing their timeline. Once the eviction goes through and he's scrambling for housing, we file for emergency custody. Housing instability, financial stress, family conflict. It'll be an easy case. They'd engineered a crisis and planned to use that crisis as evidence that I was an unfit father. I held Emma close that night, marveling at her instincts and courage. While the adults around her had been playing complex psychological games, she'd simply started documenting the truth. "Emma," I whispered, as she drifted off to sleep, "you might just save our whole family." "I hope so, Daddy. I love you and Grandma and Grandpa. I don't want anyone to be sad anymore." Neither did I. And thanks to my daughter's detective work, we finally had the evidence to stop Jessica's plan. The court date was 5 days away. Jessica thought she held all the cards, but she had no idea that a 7-year-old girl with a tablet had been recording her every move. The Riverside County Courthouse buzzed with activity on the morning of our hearing. I arrived early, wearing my best suit and carrying a folder of documents Martinez had helped me prepare. Emma sat beside me in the hallway, clutching her tablet and wearing the dress we'd chosen together. Blue with white flowers, appropriate for addressing a judge. Jessica arrived with my parents, flanked by their attorney, Robert Hensley. Hensley was a sharp-looking man in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive suit. The kind of lawyer who specialized in family disputes and probably charged $300 an hour. My parents looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact as they passed us in the hallway. Mom was dressed in her best church outfit, Dad in a suit he hadn't worn since my graduation. They looked like they were attending a funeral, rather than a legal proceeding. Amanda arrived just before we were called, accompanied by her own attorney. She nodded politely but didn't approach us. Emma waved at her mother, but Amanda's response was stiff and formal. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Patricia Moss presiding. Judge Moss was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and intelligent eyes. She reviewed the case file before calling the proceeding to order. "This is a residential eviction case brought by Robert and Patricia Cooper against their son, Lucian Cooper, regarding a property at 1420 Oak Street. Mr. Hensley, you may present your opening statement." Hensley stood with practiced confidence. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of an adult child who has overstayed his welcome and refused to pay agreed-upon rent. My clients, Robert and Patricia Cooper, are elderly homeowners who graciously allowed their son to live in their property for 5 years. During that time, he was expected to contribute $300 monthly in rent, but has accumulated $12,000 in unpaid obligations. $12,000. The fictional debt Jessica had created. Furthermore, Hensley continued, Mr. Lucian Cooper has created an unstable environment for his 7-year-old daughter, Emma, by refusing to secure independent housing and engaging in ongoing family conflicts that are detrimental to the child's well-being. Martinez stood for our response. Your Honor, Mr. Lucian Cooper has never been asked to pay rent during his 5-year residence. He has contributed over $40,000 in property improvements, paid all utilities, and served as primary caregiver for his elderly parents. The alleged rental agreement and debt are fabrications created to justify this eviction. Judge Moss reviewed her notes. Mr. Hensley, can you provide documentation of this rental agreement? Certainly, Your Honor. Hensley presented several papers to the court. These documents outline the verbal rental agreement and record of missed payments. I recognized Jessica's handwriting on those supposed rental records. She'd forged everything, creating a paper trail of fictional rent agreements and payment schedules. Judge Moss called Robert Cooper to the stand. My father looked pale and nervous as he was sworn in. Mr. Cooper, Hensley began, can you describe the living arrangements with your son? Dad's voice was barely audible. Lucian moved back home after his divorce. We thought it would be temporary. Was there an agreement about rent? Yes. $300 a month starting after the first year. Has he been paying this rent? Dad hesitated, glancing at Jessica. No, he always had excuses. Said he was doing work on the house instead. How has this affected you and your wife financially? It's been difficult. We're on fixed incomes. This was devastating. My own father was perjuring himself, repeating Jessica's lies under oath. Martinez cross-examined gently. Mr. Cooper, has your son provided care for you and your wife? Yes, he helps sometimes. Sometimes? Doesn't he drive you to medical appointments, handle household repairs, manage your medications? Jessica helps with that now. But before Jessica became involved, who provided this care? Dad looked uncomfortable. Lucian did most of it. And the $40,000 in home improvements? Were those necessary repairs? I suppose so. It was like watching my father disappear, replaced by this confused, coached stranger. Patricia Cooper testified next, largely repeating Dad's testimony. She looked miserable, barely speaking above a whisper. When Martinez asked about Emma's well-being, Mom's composure finally cracked. Emma is a wonderful child, she said, tears in her eyes. She's never been any trouble. Do you believe she's unsafe with her father? Mom glanced at Jessica, then at me. I don't know anymore, Jessica says. What does Jessica say? That we need to think about what's best for everyone. Then Jessica took the stand. Unlike my parents, she was composed and articulate, presenting herself as the devoted daughter and concerned aunt. I love my brother, she began, but I've watched him take advantage of our parents' generosity for years. He pays no rent, treats their home like his personal property, and uses them as free childcare while he works. Can you elaborate on your concerns about Emma's welfare? The housing instability is creating enormous stress for her. She's mentioned being worried about changing schools, losing her friends, and there have been incidents that concern me. What kind of incidents? Lucian losing his temper when discussing family issues. The house often being chaotic. Emma seems nervous around him sometimes. Pure fiction, delivered with convincing sincerity. What about your parents' needs? They're at an age where they need more support, but Lucian sees them as conveniences rather than people who deserve dignity and independence. Martinez's cross-examination was more aggressive. Miss Cooper, when did you first begin discussing this eviction with your parents? Several months ago, when their financial situation became untenable. Did you quit your job recently? I left my position to provide full-time care for my aging parents. Who is paying your expenses now? My parents are compensating me for care services. How much compensation? Jessica hesitated. That's between us. Isn't it true that you've withdrawn over $15,000 from their accounts in the past 6 months? Hensley objected, but the question hung in the air. The most damaging testimony came from Amanda. Her lawyer, Susan Chen, presented her as a concerned mother witnessing family dysfunction. Miss Reed, Chen began. How has this family conflict affected Emma? She's been anxious and withdrawn. The constant uncertainty about housing, the arguments between family members, it's not healthy for a 7-year-old. Have you considered seeking custody modification? I've been hoping the family could resolve things privately, but Emma's well-being has to come first. Judge Moss leaned forward. Are you seeking custody modification now? If necessary, Your Honor. Emma needs stability. The trap was closing. Jessica's lawyer presented forged rental agreements. My parents testified to fictional financial arrangements. Amanda positioned herself as the stable alternative to my chaotic household. Martinez did his best with our defense, presenting evidence of my contributions to the house and my parents' care. But without documentation proving ownership interest, we were fighting uphill. Then Hensley played his final card. Your Honor, we'd like to call Emma Cooper to the stand for an in-chambers interview regarding her living situation. My heart stopped. They wanted to question my 7-year-old daughter about whether she felt safe with me. Judge Moss considered this. Given the child's age, I'll conduct a brief interview in my chambers with only the court reporter present. As we recessed, Emma looked up at me with serious eyes. Daddy, is it time? Time for what, sweetheart? Time for me to show everyone my evidence? I'd been so focused on defending against their attacks that I'd almost forgotten about Emma's recordings. Martinez had advised against using them, concerned about the legal complications of child-recorded evidence and privacy violations. But looking at my daughter's determined face, I realized she'd been preparing for this moment all along. Emma, do you remember what we discussed about those recordings? That they're really important evidence that could help our family? That's right. But the judge would need to hear them to decide if they can be used in court. Emma nodded solemnly. I understand. I want to help. As we prepared to go into chambers, I had no idea that my 7-year-old daughter was about to change everything. The battle for my home, my daughter, and my family was about to take a turn that no one could have predicted. Judge Moss's chambers were smaller and less intimidating than the main courtroom, but the stakes felt even higher. Emma sat in a chair that was almost too big for her tablet clutched in her small hands. The court reporter positioned herself discreetly in the corner. Emma, Judge Moss said gently, I just want to ask you a few questions about your home and family. There are no wrong answers, and you can take your time, okay? Emma nodded seriously. Yes, Your Honor. How do you feel about living with your daddy? I love living with Daddy. He takes good care of me, helps with my homework, and makes sure I'm safe. Are there ever times when you feel scared or unsafe? Only when Aunt Jessica visits. She says mean things about Daddy that aren't true. Judge Moss leaned forward. What kind of things does she say? She tells Grandma and Grandpa that Daddy doesn't help them, but he drives them everywhere and fixes things when they break. She says Daddy drinks too much, but he only has beer with dinner sometimes. She tells people different lies depending on who she's talking to. That's quite an observation for someone your age. How do you know about these different conversations? Emma took a deep breath. Your Honor, can I show you something Daddy doesn't know about? The exact words from our case title. Judge Moss nodded with curiosity. Emma lifted her tablet with both hands. I've been collecting evidence like detectives do on TV. I have recordings that prove Aunt Jessica has been lying about everything. Recordings? Yes, Your Honor. I recorded conversations because I wanted to solve the mystery of why everyone was being mean to my daddy when he's the best daddy ever. Judge Moss looked intrigued, but cautious. Emma, do you understand that recording people without their permission can be complicated legally? I understand, but I think stopping bad people is more important than rules about recording. The detectives on TV say sometimes you have to break small rules to stop big crimes. The wisdom of a 7-year-old who'd been watching too many crime dramas. Can you tell me about one of these recordings? Emma scrolled through her carefully organized files. This one is called Aunt Jessica's Real Plan. She was talking on the phone in the garden, and I recorded it from my bedroom window. She pressed play, and Jessica's voice filled the chamber. The old man will probably die in the next few years anyway. The house will be worth $400,000 by then. We sell it, split the money, and I disappear somewhere warm. But first we have to get Lucian out and establish that I'm their primary caregiver. Judge Moss's eyebrows shot up. Emma continued playing the recording. The unknown male voice. And the kid? Jessica. Amanda's willing to take full custody once we establish that Lucian's an unfit father. Housing instability, financial problems, family dysfunction. The court will see a clear pattern. What about child support? Amanda doesn't want his money. She wants him out of the picture entirely. Too much drama, too much conflict. A clean break is better for everyone. The chamber fell silent. Judge Moss stared at the tablet, processing what she'd just heard. Emma, do you have other recordings like this? Yes, Your Honor. Lots of them. Emma scrolled through her files with the efficiency of a professional investigator. This one is Aunt Jessica teaching Grandma and Grandpa what to say to the CPS lady. She played another recording. Jessica's voice. Remember, you need to emphasize that Lucian doesn't contribute financially and that you feel taken advantage of. Don't mention the home improvements or the fact that there was never a rental agreement. Dad's voice. But Jessica, there really wasn't a rental agreement. Jessica. There should have been. That's the point. He's been living rent-free while you struggled financially. Mom's voice. We haven't been struggling. Jessica, you have been struggling. You just didn't realize it. I've shown you the numbers. Judge Moss's expression grew more serious. How many recordings do you have, Emma? 47 total, Your Honor. I organized them by topic and date because that's what professional investigators do. She showed another file labeled Aunt Jessica, Coaching Mommy. Amanda's voice came through clearly. I feel terrible doing this to Lucian. He's actually a wonderful father. Jessica, you're not doing anything to Lucian. You're protecting Emma. The housing situation proves he can't provide stability. The family conflict proves he's putting his own needs ahead of Emma's well-being. Amanda. But he's only in this situation because of the eviction. Jessica. Which happened because he refused to be responsible about rent and housing arrangements. Look, Amanda, do you want Emma caught in the middle of this family drama for years? A clean break protects her from all of it. Amanda. You really think the court will grant me full custody? Jessica. With the evidence I've gathered about his instability and the housing crisis, absolutely. Especially if you can document his inability to provide a secure environment. Judge Moss stopped the playback. Emma, do your parents know you've been making these recordings? Daddy found out yesterday. I showed him because I knew the court case was coming and I wanted to help save our family. What about the other people in these recordings? They don't know. I was very careful to be a good detective. Judge Moss smiled despite the seriousness of the situation. You certainly were thorough. Emma, can I listen to one more recording? Which one would you like to hear? Do you have any recordings of your Aunt Jessica discussing money? Emma nodded and selected a file labeled Stealing from Grandma and Grandpa. Jessica's voice. I've been handling their finances for months now. They don't pay attention to the bank statements, and I've been gradually shifting money into accounts they can't access. They think they're broke, which is perfect for justifying the house sale. Unknown voice. How much have you taken? Jessica. About $25,000 so far. Small amounts over time, so it doesn't trigger any alerts. By the time this is over, I'll have enough to start fresh somewhere else. What if they figure it out? Jessica. They won't. I've convinced them they have early-stage dementia. Every time they question something, I suggest it's their memory failing. It's amazing how quickly elderly people accept that explanation. Judge Moss's face had gone pale. She looked at Emma with a mixture of amazement and concern. Emma, these recordings contain evidence of serious crimes. Do you understand that? I understand that Aunt Jessica is a bad person who's hurting my family, and I wanted to stop her. You may have done exactly that. Judge Moss called a recess and asked all attorneys to return to chambers immediately. Within minutes, the small room was packed with lawyers, all talking at once. Your Honor, Hensley began. These recordings were made without consent and by a minor. They're inadmissible. Martinez countered. These recordings provide evidence of fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit perjury. The child acted independently to document criminal behavior. Amanda's attorney Chen looked shaken. Your Honor, my client had no knowledge of any financial crimes. She was manipulated into believing she was protecting her daughter. Judge Moss raised her hand for silence. Mr. Hensley, does your client wish to address these allegations? Through the chamber windows, I could see Jessica in the main courtroom, frantically whispering to my parents. She clearly knew something had gone wrong, but didn't yet understand the extent of her exposure. We request time to review these materials, Hensley said. Denied. Mr. Martinez, does your client consent to having these recordings entered into evidence? Absolutely, Your Honor. Miss Chen, does your client wish to withdraw her custody petition? Chen looked at Amanda through the window, then back at the judge. Yes, Your Honor. My client withdraws all custody claims and apologizes for any misunderstanding about Mr. Cooper's fitness as a parent. Judge Moss turned back to Emma, who had been following the legal discussions with the intensity of someone watching their favorite detective show. Emma, you may have just saved your family, but I need to ask you one more important question. Yes, Your Honor? If you could have anything happen as a result of this case, what would it be? Emma thought for a moment, then answered with the clarity that only children possess. I want to keep living with my daddy in our house with Grandma and Grandpa. I want Aunt Jessica to stop lying and being mean. And I want everyone to be happy again like before. That sounds like a very reasonable outcome to me. Judge Moss dismissed everyone back to the main courtroom, but the case was essentially over. Jessica's conspiracy had been exposed by the one person she'd never considered a threat, the 7-year-old girl she'd planned to separate from her father. As we returned to our seats, Jessica finally understood what had happened. Her face went white as she saw Emma holding her tablet, and the look of panic in her eyes told me she knew exactly what those recordings contained. The hunter had become the hunted, and my daughter was the detective who'd solved the case. Judge Moss called the court back to order, but the atmosphere had completely changed. Jessica sat rigid in her chair, her earlier confidence replaced by obvious panic. My parents looked confused and worried, whispering to each other as Hensley tried to explain what had transpired in chambers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Judge Moss began, "new evidence has been presented that significantly alters this case. Before proceeding with any rulings, I'm ordering an immediate investigation into allegations of elder abuse, financial fraud, and conspiracy." She turned to address Jessica directly. "Miss Cooper, you have the right to remain silent, but I'm informing you that evidence suggests you may have committed serious criminal acts against your elderly parents." Jessica's face went ashen. "Your Honor, I don't understand. The evidence includes recorded conversations in which you admit to stealing money from your parents, manipulating their perception of their mental health, and conspiring to remove your brother from his home under false pretenses." My father stood up shakily. "Your Honor, what do you mean, stealing money?" Judge Moss looked at him with compassion. "Mr. Cooper, according to the evidence presented, your daughter has been taking money from your accounts without permission while convincing you that you were experiencing financial difficulties." Mom gasped audibly. "Jessica, is this true?" Jessica's composure finally cracked. "Mom, I was trying to protect you. You don't understand how much money Lucian was costing you." "By lying about rental agreements that never existed?" Judge Moss asked. "By forging documents? By coaching your parents to commit perjury?" The full scope of Jessica's deception was being laid bare in front of everyone. Emma sat beside me, watching her aunt's downfall with the satisfied expression of a detective who'd closed her first case. Judge Moss continued, "Furthermore, the evidence shows a conspiracy between Miss Cooper and Miss Reed to manufacture a custody case based on fabricated concerns about Mr. Lucian Cooper's parenting abilities." Amanda stood up from across the courtroom. "Your Honor, I want to apologize publicly. I was manipulated into believing things about Lucian that weren't true. He's an excellent father, and I never should have questioned his custody rights. Miss Reed, your attorney has already withdrawn your custody petition. However, you'll need to address your role in this conspiracy with the investigating authorities." The bailiff approached Jessica's table as Judge Moss issued her preliminary rulings. "First, the eviction case is dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Lucian Cooper has proven that no valid rental agreement existed and that the alleged debt was fabricated. Relief flooded through me like a physical sensation. Second, I'm issuing a temporary restraining order prohibiting Jessica Cooper from having any contact with Robert and Patricia Cooper pending the criminal investigation. Third, I'm ordering an immediate freeze on all bank accounts associated with the Cooper family pending a forensic accounting review." Jessica finally spoke, her voice desperate. "Your Honor, you don't understand the situation. My parents needed my help. Lucian was taking advantage." "Miss Cooper," Judge Moss interrupted, "the evidence directly contradicts your claims. You've systematically defrauded elderly family members while attempting to destroy your brother's relationship with his daughter. The court finds your actions reprehensible." The bailiff placed handcuffs on Jessica as Judge Moss continued. "Jessica Cooper, you're being arrested on preliminary charges of elder abuse, theft, fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." As Jessica was led away in handcuffs, my parents finally seemed to understand what had been happening. Dad broke down completely, tears streaming down his face. "Lucian, son, I'm so sorry. She convinced us you were. We thought we were doing what was best." I stood and walked over to their table, wrapping my arms around both of my parents. "It's okay, Dad. She manipulated everyone. What matters is that we know the truth now." Mom clung to me, sobbing. "We almost lost you. We almost lost Emma. What have we done?" "You were victims too," I told her. "Jessica spent months convincing you of things that weren't true. But we're family, and families forgive each other." Judge Moss allowed us time to reunite before addressing the final details. "Mr. Cooper," she said to me, "the court recognizes that you've been the victim of an elaborate fraud. Your contributions to your parents' welfare and property are well documented, and your fitness as a parent has never been legitimately in question." She turned to Emma, who was beaming with pride at the successful resolution of her investigation. "Young lady, while I cannot officially condone recording private conversations, your actions may have prevented serious harm to your family. You showed remarkable courage and intelligence." Emma stood up politely. "Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to save my daddy and my grandparents. You did exactly that. 3 hours later, we were finally home, all of us. My parents sat in their familiar living room chairs while Emma showed them her tablet full of detective work. The bank had already confirmed that Jessica had stolen over $28,000 from their accounts, money that would be recovered and returned. I can't believe we fell for her lies, Dad said, shaking his head. Everything seems so convincing. That's what good manipulators do, I explained. They tell you what you're afraid might be true. Jessica convinced you that you were becoming a burden, that I was taking advantage of your generosity, that Emma needed more stability. She found your insecurities and exploited them. Mom reached for Emma's hand. Sweetheart, can you ever forgive Grandma and Grandpa for believing such awful things about your daddy? Emma climbed into Mom's lap. Of course, Grandma. Aunt Jessica was very sneaky. Even smart grown-ups can be tricked by sneaky people. Over the following weeks, the full extent of Jessica's crimes became clear. The forensic accounting revealed systematic theft dating back nearly a year. She'd gradually moved money into accounts my parents couldn't access, then used their resulting financial stress to justify the house sale plan. The investigation also uncovered forged documents, manipulated medical records suggesting my parents had cognitive decline, and a detailed timeline showing how Jessica had orchestrated every aspect of the family crisis. Jessica was ultimately sentenced to 18 months in prison, 5 years of probation, and complete restitution to my parents. She was also required to attend psychological counseling and was permanently barred from having any contact with our family. Amanda faced no criminal charges, but lost her teaching position when her school district learned about her role in the custody conspiracy. She moved across the country to live with her sister, sending Emma birthday cards but never requesting visitation. The divorce of trying to eliminate me from Emma's life had backtracked so completely that she eliminated herself instead. 6 months after the court case, I was renovating the house again, but this time I was adding a beautiful apartment above the garage where my parents could live independently while staying close to family. Dad insisted on helping with the construction despite his age, and Emma appointed herself as the official supervisor of all work. The house itself was officially transferred to my name as compensation for my years of unpaid care and financial contributions. But more importantly, the trust between my parents and me had been rebuilt stronger than ever. Daddy, Emma said one evening as we worked on homework together, I learned something important from our detective case. What's that, sweetheart? Sometimes the people who hurt families the most are the people inside the families. But if you're brave enough to tell the truth, good things happen. She was right. The truth had saved us, delivered by the smallest and most unlikely detective any of us could have imagined. My parents learned to trust their own judgment again, instead of relying on Jessica's interpretation of their lives. I learned that family loyalty must be earned through love and honesty, not demanded through manipulation. And Emma learned that courage and truth can overcome even the most elaborate deceptions. Today, our family dinners are filled with real laughter again. Emma still practices her detective skills, but now she investigates harmless mysteries, like who ate the last cookie or why the garden gnome keeps moving. My parents have regained their confidence and independence, no longer questioning their mental abilities or worth. The house rings with happiness and genuine love, the kind that can't be faked or manipulated. Sometimes I think about Jessica and wonder if she ever understands the damage she caused. But mostly, I focus on the family she tried to destroy and failed to break, because in the end, love and truth are stronger than lies and manipulation. And sometimes, justice comes from the most unexpected sources, like a 7-year-old girl with a tablet and the determination to save her family. Emma taught me that real detective work isn't about tricks or deception. It's about patiently collecting evidence, having the courage to speak truth to power, and never giving up on the people you love. Our home is secure now, our family is whole, and our future is bright. Jessica's betrayal ultimately brought us closer together, proving that even the deepest wounds can heal when they're treated with honesty, forgiveness, and love. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone close to you was manipulating the truth to get what they wanted? How did you handle discovering that betrayal, and what advice would you give to families going through similar challenges? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, or reminded you of the importance of family bonds, Please like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Your support means everything and helps me continue sharing these meaningful stories. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming adversity, standing up for truth, and the power of family love. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope your own family bonds continue to grow stronger every day.